Good morning, children. This is Grandma Carla, and I am here with my granddaughter, Ruth. How are you today, Ruth?
Good.
And Ruth is how old?
6.
6 years old. And Ruth, where do you go to school?
I'm homeschooled.
You're homeschooled. And what is your favorite subject in homeschool?
I love to do math.
You love to do math. I wonder who in your family also likes math. Who likes math a lot?
Mommy.
Mommy likes math a lot. Good, good. What about Grandma? Does Grandma like math? I teach math, don't I? So the apple does not fall far from the tree. Do you know what that means?
No.
No, that means sometimes children and grandchildren turn out a lot like their parents and grandparents do. And I'm very proud of you. You've done a very good job, and I've heard you read, and that's just amazing. So you're going to have to read for us sometime on our little video here. But this time, Grandma's going to read to you chapter 12 of Abby Lost at Sea. Are you ready? As they climbed the stairs, Abby could hear the soft voices coming from inside the little church. Luke, I think he's here. Shh. Luke poked his head inside the door and peered into the candlelit room. There are 2 men up front. Let's wait till they're done. Luke sat down on the stairs, but Abby peered into the church. She could see a large wooden cross on the wall behind the altar. Wooden pews filled the room, except for the center aisle. Sitting on the front pew was someone who appeared to be the pastor, with another man, a sailor, Abby guessed. Their heads were bowed in prayer, but Abby couldn't make out their words. She returned to sit with Luke. It looks like he keeps the church open late at night to help repentant sailors, she said. Somehow being at this church reminded her of her own church back home, where she felt safe, loved, and close to her family. A lonely ache shivered through her. I bet he's a wonderful pastor. I suppose, Luke said noncommittally. Seems like a hopeless job with all those grog shops just down the street. I sure don't see sailors lined up at his door. Abby sniffed. Well, if even one sinner repents, the angels in heaven rejoice. Is that so? Luke drawled. I didn't know angels went to parties. Next, you're going to tell me that they dance. They'd probably hold a ball if you were to repent, Luke quigley. Luke smirked at her in the moonlight. Well, don't hold your breath. I ain't a dancer or a believer. Abby turned away. I know. She hadn't been much of one either, she realized. Her quiet words bothered him more than he cared to admit. Don't be so glum. If there is a God, then he's probably got a plan for hopeless cases like me. Just then they heard footsteps behind them. Then they turned. They saw 2 men exiting the small church. Luke jumped up and held out his hand to the man dressed in a pastor's white collar. Hello, sir. I'm Luke Quigley, and this here is Abigail Kendall. We've come to see if you can help us. Okay, Grandma's arm is all cramped up here. Let me move it around. There. Now I'm situated. The pastor shook Luke's hand and nodded at Abby as she rose to greet him. I'm Pastor Achilles, but everyone around here knows me as the sailor's pastor. I'm pleased to meet you both. Then he shook hands with the man who stood beside him. Charlie, don't forget to read your Bible every day. It'll fill you with living water, and you'll have no need to drink the whiskey again. The grizzly-faced sailor gave him a parting grin. Thanks for the book, Pastor, he said, holding the Bible up as he headed down the steps. Pastor Achilles addressed Abby and Luke. Now, young ones, what can I help you with? Have you come to learn of God? Luke cleared his throat. No, sir. Abby here was raised in church. The help we need is a little more practical. Abby jumped into the conversation. We were lost at sea in the ship's jolly boat, and my parents probably think we've drowned. But of course, we haven't. All the same, we need to get to the island they're on in order to tell them." The pastor's mouth opened in surprise at Abby's frantic explanation. Then he put one arm around each of them, shepherding Abby and Luke through the doorway into the church. "Why don't you come in and tell me about it? I mean, from the beginning." Abby took a breath of relief. They had found the right man to help them, she was sure. They only had to explain their situation, and he would find them a sea captain headed to Oahu. As they settled themselves in a pew near the candlelight, Abby said, "Well, it began a few weeks ago, back in California, when my parents received a letter from Uncle Samuel." Half an hour later, the pastor rose stiffly from the hard bench and rubbed his clean-shaven chin. "I think I know just the man to help you, Captain Horatio Chandler. I led his son to Jesus last year before the poor lad shipped to Brazil and died of the fever. Broke the captain's heart, but he's a good man, and I'm sure he'll help you. If I'm not mistaken, he's bound for Oahu, perhaps even this very night with the rising tide. We'd best hurry and see if we can locate him in town. Otherwise, we'll have to swim out to his ship, something I hate to do at night. One never knows what's lurking in the dark below one's legs." Luke arched his eyebrows at Abby. "Hurry up, Ab. I don't aim to go swimming when the sharks are out looking for dinner." The two quickened their steps as they followed Pastor Achilles away from the peaceful little church and back into the noisy streets of Lahaina. Pastor Achilles led them along the wooden boardwalk of Front Street, stopping to peer in each saloon. When he disappeared inside the grog and gambling, he was gone more than a few minutes. Abby's curiosity nagged her. Luke sat patiently on the boardwalk with his back to her, but she just had to peek inside. She slipped through the open door and stood, searching the room. Although it was smoky inside, candles on tables lit the interior well enough for Abby to see. The sounds of glasses tinkling, sailors talking, and chairs scraping the floor filled her ears as she peered through the dim light in search of Pastor Achilles. "Ha ha ha!" Abby stiffened as rough laughter rang in her ears. She knew that laugh, and it made her wince in fear. Her pulse picked up, thrumming in her temples. It was the evil laugh of the sailor with whom she had so recently come face to face. Searching through the gloom, Abby saw him sitting with another man at a table in the back of the tavern. "To success!" He raised his rum glass and clinked it against his drinking partner's. After downing the drink, he rolled up a piece of leather and slipped it inside his shirt front. But as he took another swig of grog, his eyes roved beyond his drinking partner and fell on Abby. His smile died instantly, revealing a chilling expression that made Abby swallow nervously. Instinctively, she inched back toward the wall, gasping when her hands bumped into it. Still looking intently at her, the sailor began to rise. When his chair fell over and he didn't stop to right it, Abby panicked. He was striding toward her. Oh no, her legs felt like jelly. She stood rooted to the spot as the sailor, his hand resting on the hilt of his dagger, came closer and closer through the crowd and the noise. "Abby?" It was Pastor Achilles' voice suddenly beside her. "This is Captain Horatio Chandler of the Flying Lady." Abby eyed the pastor gratefully and held out a limp hand to the blue-coated captain. "Hello, sir. As it happens, he and his crew are leaving tonight for Honolulu." The pastor smiled. "Good news, eh?" Captain Chandler stood straight and tall in his coat with brass buttons. His hat was off and tucked under his left arm, revealing dark brown hair with a streak of gray at each temple. He extended his right hand to shake hers. "Always glad to help a damsel in distress," he said with a conspiratorial wink. "But I thought you had a traveling companion." Abby's eyes darted back to the sailor. He'd stopped dead in his tracks, but his eyes focused on her. Yes, sir. Luke is out front. Why don't we go tell him the good news? You go ahead, girl. I need to round up my men first. I'll be right along. Captain Chandler placed his hat back on his head and moved away through the crowd. Come on, Abby, Pastor Achilles said, leading her by the arm from the smoky tavern. This is no place for an innocent like yourself. When they reached the wooden boardwalk, Luke rose. Abby, what's wrong? You're as white as a ghost. Nothing, she swallowed, and glanced nervously out to sea. A few seconds later, the captain joined them, and they made their introductions as they began walking to the harbor. Horatio, are you dropping off stock in Honolulu and then heading to China as usual? The pastor asked. Yes, we've still got some goods from California to unload in Honolulu. But we've a full load of sandalwood for the Chinese. They love the scent. I can sell every last board there for a grand profit. His boots sounded loudly on the harbor's wooden dock. Here we are, children, at the captain's skiff, Pastor Achilles said, indicating the 16-foot boat tied to the dock. He shook hands with Abby and Luke. Godspeed, he said enthusiastically. Horatio, thank you. He gripped the captain's hands warmly. Give even a cup of cold water in his name, and you'll receive your reward in heaven. Captain Chandler looked momentarily stricken. To be reunited is all I ask, he murmured. Then the captain turned to greet his two men who waited in the skiff and made introductions. Mr. Job here is my first mate. He inclined his head toward a small, white-haired man in a sailor's typical uniform of duck cloth. If you need anything, speak to him. The captain picked Abby up by the waist and lowered her to Job. This is Abigail and her friend Luke. Mr. Job caught and steadied her in the bottom of the tipsy skiff. There you go, girl. Are you joining us on our sail now? Captain Chandler stepped down into the skiff, causing it to rock violently. She and the boy were lost on their way on their own ship's dinghy. They'll be catching a ride with us to Oahu, where the child's parents are. He took a seat at the bow of the boat. Job spoke to Luke. Young man, he directed, untie the line and toss it in, and yourself too, if ye be wanting to tag along. Luke bent to the task by the light of the full moon. He tossed the line to Job and leapt into the back of the skiff. How long till we leave? He asked. The captain took out his pocket watch and consulted it. In less than 3 hours, lad. As Mr. Job bent to the oars, Abby sat rigidly on the wooden bench, listening to the soft sound of the oars dipping into the black sea. She was doubly glad to be leaving Lahaina and the dark-haired beast who had come toward her. Trying to shake the mood, Abby searched the bay. Is that your ship, Captain? She pointed to the three-masted barkentine that lay silver in the moonlight. Aye, that's her. A finer woman I've never known. The captain turned to wink at Abby. Abby gave the captain a weak smile. It faded as her mind pored over the evening's events. Abby was troubled. By all accounts, things now looked right. They were finally on their way to Ma and Pa and a joyful reunion. She would be glad. But she was growing more unsettled, as if trouble lay brewing secretly in the dark, as if she were swimming in a black sea, and underneath lurked unseen sharks. Do you like the book Abby Lost at Sea? I enjoyed reading it to you. Do you listen to it online so that you can know what we're doing next? You probably missed a few chapters. I put them on last night. So you'll have to go back and catch up, okay?
Okay.
I love you, Ruth. Can I have a kiss?
Bye.
Bye.